into this space in time, in connection with all that is, in connection with all that I am, in connection with all that you are, and opening up the space to explore what the tarot has to tell us about current events, and in particular COVID-19 at this time. And it's very, very interesting to reflect on the tarot as a mirror for individual selves, but also for what's going on in the collective. And over the last several decades, I've been working with the tarot as a mirror of collective consciousness and the evolution of this consciousness through history. And we can acknowledge some very important truths in respect to how humans are evolving in spiritual ways, in the respect to our humanity on the planet. So one of the tools I've used to look at this evolution is combining numerology with tarot. And the numerology perfectly matches in with the tarot. When you calculate a birthday of a particular individual, you are going to get 1, 2, or 3 numbers, depending on the birth date, that mirror the soul of that individual, their soul purpose, the curriculum they've signed up for as a soul in terms of life lessons to master while they spend time in this body on this planet. But we can also look at the whole population of the world and how we are all interconnected as one and evolving through time and space together. And the tarot equally can mirror what's going on generationally over time. So in looking at the tarot in this way, there are several themes that come up in respect to current times and the current generations alive on the planet right now. And what we see is 4 key Major Arcana, which are the very powerful cards of a tarot deck. In a tarot deck, for those of you who are not familiar, we have 78 cards and we have 22 very powerful spiritual cards known as the Major Arcana. And these cards might be described as the universal laws that show us important truths of what it takes to live a spiritual life on this planet and what we need to master in terms of our spiritual enlightenment in these human bodies, and how can we navigate and evolve and journey through the spiral of ascension. So I know there's a lot of complexity in what I'm saying, in the words I'm using, and hopefully I can simplify it a bit to show what this means for our real everyday lives as well. But these 4 Major Arcana that are surfacing right now when we do the numerology for people alive on the planet right now, we are getting the Devil card and the Tower card. quite prominently. And this is very interesting in respect to current events such as COVID-19, because these two cards are quite dramatic to witness and sometimes cause fear in clients when they see them in a personal reading. But I would like to talk about them not as something we should fear, but rather as a mirror for something we are experiencing, and that with understanding we can make sense of it, and that it doesn't have to be so scary. It can be more enlightening and helpful to us as we understand the meanings and the deeper meanings of these archetypal images of the devil and the tower. So the devil is pictured as such, so the typical satanic looking image, but we're not talking about satanic beliefs or anything like that in this case. We're talking about the collective shadow in a Carl Jungian way. So Carl Jung is a great masterful psychotherapist that many of you have heard of. And if you have not, you can Google him. He's quite respected in the field of psychology. And he was a psychologist who explored the subconscious with great studies and experiments and lengthy exploration. And the subconscious is that aspect of ourselves that is operating in our lives with material from our childhoods, from our past, programming, if you like, mental programming, emotional programming from whatever we experienced in our childhoods, and operates in a habit way, so that we have these ways of coping mechanisms or habits in our lives that are operating without us even thinking about them. So as we go about our relationships, our work, all of our external activities, our subconscious habits are present without us even knowing it most of the time. So these subconscious patterns are operating, and because we're not always aware of them, we are also subconsciously projecting them out into the world in our reactions to the world. And these reactions are our trigger points. So, for example, when we go into a relationship, we can get triggered by somebody about something that is upsetting for us and cause us to react with a negative emotion like anger, fear, insecurity, anxiety, jealousy, whatever it is, and we're triggered to react and give out to that person in some way. So this is our subconscious emotional or mental patterns, and we project those outwards. And so in extreme cases, when people have suppressed subconscious issues that trigger anger, for example, this can also be in an extreme violence, aggression. And this is what we might call external devil energy, when people are committing crimes, acts of violence, for example, and people will say the devil made them do it. But in fact, it's not a devil, it's their own deep-seated psychology, and sometimes negative subconscious psychology, that is the root of their negative behavior. So what we're looking at here with the devil then is, as if people do not own and recognize and acknowledge whatever is operating subconsciously, a habit, a negative pattern, it will get projected outwards into the external environment, and then becomes, ultimately, if we have hundreds and millions of people doing this, it's projected outward and becomes a collective devil. So all of this pent up, unresolved emotional matters that have not been addressed in our real lives through therapy or the opportunity to express our emotions in healthy ways, then those negative emotions get personified and projected outwards. And that is, in tarot, what we would call a devil, from more the psychological perspective that Jung would have used. And he used the tarot cards in his work as a mirror for this unconscious, this subconscious within us, but it's also the collective unconscious. So we then have to work with that collective devil. But if each of us were to master the devil energy, in other words, own that energy for thyself, recognize what is your habit, what is your negative emotional patterning, what triggers you, understanding that. Usually therapy is the best method to discover that. And of course, there's up-teen types of therapy out there in the world now. So whatever works for you. But through self-reflection and inner work and therapy, you can recognize these negative patternings within you, the subconscious habits and triggers, and then begin to acknowledge and own that aspect of your own being, so that you no longer project it out into the world and blame the other person. Say they did it, it's their fault, it's their problem, they made me do it, they made me feel this way. So whenever we point the finger and say they made me do it, or they made me feel this way, or they're causing me this pain, or triggering my anger, that is not owning your own shadow. That's blaming somebody else for it. And so in that way, the devil remains external. But if you own your piece of shadow within yourself, like in the yin yang, even if you're all light and bright, every person has that spot of shadow in them, and each and every one of us needs to own that piece of shadow, or that little devil within us, or the demons within us. And once we do, we no longer project that outward to the external, and we can integrate it and own that better for ourselves. So this is the ultimate task set before us of the devil energy, presented in this 15th Major Arcana. So there's a lot of complexity there, and it's easier said than done. It's really about facing your fears about yourself and your contribution to the collective shadow, and owning that piece in yourself so that you can begin to hold the energies. We also need to note here it's earth energy, and we work with the 4 elements in tarot. So this is earth vibration. It's associated with the sign of Capricorn in the zodiac. And astrologically at this time, we've gotten a strong dose of Capricorn energy. You can consult your masterful astrologers for that. And while I do astrology, I use it more in a personal context than the collective, but you can consult other experts, to which I could refer you, who work with it more collectively, such as my esteemed mother, Danielle Vierling, who has worked with the tarot all my life, all my 54 years of life nearly. She's been my astrological advisor and mentor and teacher. But I would refer you to her to understand exactly what's going on with the planets at this time. But with this strong Capricorn dose, it's calling us to all get real, to really face our fears, face our truths, not push them down or away or project them onto somebody else, but to really get real with ourselves and see that we've all contributed to this current state of affairs on the planet. We've all contributed to what appears to be a collective mess and what appears to be more shadow than light sometimes on the planet right now. From everything from all the problems we had before COVID-19 that still exist on the planet, as war and hunger and climate change and lack of resources and poverty and so on and so forth. We can make a very, very long list of the problems confronting our planet at this time, and not problems that aren't improving, but only getting worse over time. And then we've compounded that now with COVID-19. So it's very disconcerting times, unsettling times. We don't feel the earth, but to feel the earth energy, which is in its best case, would be grounded, supportive energy. But when we go into fear and insecurity, this energy doesn't feel safe. And we feel a disconnection from our own bodies, our own planet. And when we're in that state of being, that insecure state of being, when we don't feel truly connected with what matters, that is when we go into negative, fearful, devil kind of energy. So anyway, there's a lot in this to explore, and I can't explore everything here and now, so we're going to pause here